A single brick. That is all it takes to build a wall. But what does it take to tear one down? A wall built not just of mortar and stone, but of hatred, despair, and an unyielding will to destroy? In the spring of 1943, within the confines of a besieged city, a desperate few prepare to answer this question. They stand against an empire, armed with little more than courage and a few smuggled weapons. Their fight is not for victory, for they know victory is impossible. Their fight is for something far more profound, for dignity in the face of annihilation. The year is 1943. Across Europe, the Nazi war machine grinds forward, systematically erasing entire communities. In the heart of occupied Poland lies Warsaw, a city scarred by war, its Jewish population forcibly confined within a grim, walled enclosure, the Warsaw Ghetto. Since its establishment in October 1940, the ghetto has become a death trap, where overcrowding, rampant disease, and starvation claim tens of thousands of lives each month. By early 1943, the Jewish population within the ghetto has plummeted. From over 400,000 residents initially crammed into its narrow streets, only an estimated 60,000 to 80,000 remain. Most of the others have been deported to the Treblinka extermination camp during the Great Action of July to September 1942, an operation that saw approximately 265,000 to 300,000 Jews sent to their deaths. Now, a young man steps forward to lead the remaining souls in a final, defiant act. His name is Mordechai Anielewicz. Born in 1919 in Wysokow, a small town northeast of Warsaw, Mordechai Anielewicz grew up in a working-class Polish-Jewish family. His family later moved to Warsaw, where he completed his elementary education and attended a Hebrew secondary school. As a teenager, Mordechai Anielewicz was drawn to socialist Zionist ideals, joining the Hashomer Hatzair youth movement, where he quickly distinguished himself through his leadership qualities, intelligence, and a passionate commitment to activism. He became a key organizer in Warsaw, focusing on education, self-discipline, and fostering a strong sense of Jewish identity in the face of rising anti-Semitism. In the early years of the war, he engaged in underground activities, even attempting to establish an escape route to Palestine through the Soviet Union before being briefly imprisoned. Returning to Warsaw, he dedicated himself to organizing youth groups and clandestine publications that urged resistance against the Nazi occupation. By November 1942, at just 23 years old, Mordechai Anielewicz assumes command of the Żydowska Organizacja Bojowa, or ZOB, the Jewish combat organization. He is not a career soldier, but a quiet, modest, and sympathetic young man, transformed by the brutal realities of the ghetto into a commander of immense resolve. The ZOB, along with the Jewish Military Union, ZZW, represents the collective will of the ghetto's remaining inhabitants to resist. They are an underdog in every conceivable way, facing the full might of the German war machine. The obstacles facing Mordechai Anielewicz and the ZOB are monumental, seemingly insurmountable. The very notion of armed resistance within the Warsaw Ghetto has been met with skepticism and outright opposition for months. Many of the ghetto's elders, scarred by previous German reprisals, initially cautioned against any confrontation, fearing it would only hasten the complete liquidation of the ghetto and the extermination of its remaining population. They argued that open resistance would provoke a disproportionate and catastrophic German retaliation. The sheer disparity in strength is chilling. The ZOB, under Mordechai Anielewicz's command, numbers approximately 500 fighters. The ZZW adds another 250, bringing the total armed Jewish resistance to about 700 to 750 individuals. Their arsenal is tragically meager. A few hundred pistols, some rifles, 2 or 3 light machine guns, and several thousand grenades, many of them crude, homemade Molotov cocktails crafted from bottles and gasoline. Against this, the German forces possess overwhelming power. They are a well-trained, heavily armed military machine, backed by tanks, armored vehicles, artillery, and aircraft. The ghetto itself is a prison, its walls patrolled, its gates guarded. Escape is nearly impossible, and outside support is minimal. Attempts to establish contact with the Polish Home Army, the primary Polish underground resistance, initially met with little success in the summer of 1942. While a small number of weapons, primarily pistols and explosives, were later acquired from the Home Army in October 1942, it is a trickle compared to the flood of German firepower. The physical conditions within the ghetto are themselves an enemy. The population is weakened by years of starvation and disease. Bunkers and hiding places, though meticulously constructed, are rudimentary, offering little long-term protection against systematic destruction. The institutional resistance of the German regime is absolute and merciless. Their intent is not merely to suppress, but to obliterate. Yet, a small but significant victory in January 1943 provides a flicker of hope and solidifies Mordechai Anielewicz's leadership. On January 18, German forces entered the ghetto to resume deportations, intending to send thousands more to Treblinka. But this time, they are met with armed resistance. ZOB and ZZW fighters engage the Germans in street clashes, utilizing their pistols and grenades. The Germans suffer casualties, including about a dozen killed and several dozen wounded, and are forced to halt the deportations after a few days. Approximately 1,200 Jews are killed and 5,000 deported, but the planned 8,000 are not met. This unexpected setback forces the Germans to withdraw. The Jews within the ghetto interpret this halt as a victory. For 2 months, the Germans attempt to use deception to persuade the remaining Jews to leave peacefully. But the residents have seen the truth. The January resistance proves that armed defiance, however desperate, is possible. It galvanizes support for the ZOB and Mordechai Anielewicz, inspiring a frantic period of bunker construction and defensive preparations. No one believed it was possible to stand against the Nazi might within the ghetto walls. They are about to be proven catastrophically wrong. The dawn of April 19, 1943, breaks over Warsaw, but within the ghetto walls, a profound silence precedes the storm. It is the eve of Passover, a time of liberation in Jewish tradition, and also the day before Adolf Hitler's birthday. The German High Command intends to present their leader with a ghetto-free Warsaw as a morbid gift. At approximately 2 a.m., the ghetto is completely surrounded. At 4 a.m., SS and police units, under the initial command of SS Oberfuhrer Ferdinand von Sammern-Frankenegg, begin their final, gross action, the complete liquidation of the Warsaw Ghetto. Their objective is to deport the remaining 50,000 to 60,000 Jews. The German force is substantial, 850 soldiers, including German and Ukrainian auxiliaries, accompanied by a light tank and 2 armored cars. Their plan is to complete the operation within 3 days. Inside the ghetto, Mordechai Anielewicz and the ZOB are ready. They received advanced warning of the impending action. The fighters are ordered to their positions, strategically placed in rooftops, balconies, windows, and concealed bunkers. Civilians are urged to retreat into the 631 underground shelters and hiding places that have been meticulously prepared. Walls are plastered with defiant messages, "Honorable death," and "To arms." Women and children to the air raid shelters. At 6 a.m., the German columns, confident of a swift and easy operation, push into the ghetto. They are met with a hail of bullets, grenades, and Molotov cocktails. From concealed positions, ZOB fighters unleash their meager but potent fire. The lead German tank, hit by a Molotov cocktail, catches fire. The Germans are stunned. They expected passive compliance, not organized, armed resistance. The initial assault falters. The German advance is repulsed, and their troops are forced to retreat outside the ghetto walls. On this first day, the Germans report 1 killed and 24 wounded. However, independent research suggests that as many as 12 German soldiers are killed or wounded in this initial assault alone, and some estimates for the entire uprising suggest over 300 German casualties. The humiliation of this initial defeat is profound for the German command. SS Brigadefuhrer Jürgen Stroop, dispatched by Heinrich Himmler himself, arrives in Warsaw on April 17. but takes over command of the Rosaction from von Sammern-Frankenegg on April 19, after the initial failure. Stroop is ordered to crush the uprising with maximum severity and ruthless determination. What does it tell you about a man that he made that choice with everything to lose? Tell me in the comments. Stroop immediately shifts tactics. He orders a more brutal, systematic approach. His forces, now numbering over 2,000 Waffen-SS soldiers, police, and Wehrmacht troops, supported by heavy artillery and flamethrowers, begin to systematically burn the ghetto, block by block. The goal is to flush out the hidden inhabitants and resistance fighters. On April 20, the second day of the uprising, German forces continue their attacks. Stroop reports 3 killed and 10 wounded German soldiers. They capture 533 Jews. The fighting is intense, focused on strategic points and the entrances to known bunkers. The Zob fighters, though heavily outnumbered and outgunned, continue to resist fiercely, using their knowledge of the ghetto's labyrinthine passages and interconnected buildings. SS Brigadier Jürgen Stroop arrives in Warsaw on April 19, quickly taking command from the disgraced von Sammern-Frankenegg. His initial reports to his superiors convey a mix of frustration and underestimation. He perceives the resistance not as a coordinated military effort, but as a desperate, almost animalistic reaction from bandits and subhumans refusing to comply with orders. Stroop's daily reports, meticulously compiled for Himmler, initially minimize German losses and exaggerate the ease of the operation. He believes the Jewish population is merely hiding, clinging to life in subterranean shelters, rather than actively engaging in combat. His orders reflect this miscalculation. Comb out with maximum severity, smoke them out, and destroy by fire. He assumes that by systematically burning buildings, the Jews will simply emerge to surrender. He views their refusal to assemble at collection points as stubbornness, not a calculated act of defiance. The idea that these subhumans could organize a sustained armed uprising against the might of the German military is anathema to his worldview, and he fails to grasp the depth of their resolve, believing it to be a temporary, disorganized spasm of defiance rather than a fight for dignity and revenge. He sees only a nuisance to be eliminated, a Jewish quarter to be erased, a task he aims to complete with ruthless efficiency to impress his superiors. By April 21, the fires begin to spread, consuming entire sections of the ghetto. Stroop reports 0 killed and 5 wounded German soldiers, but states 5,200 Jews are captured. The Germans begin using flamethrowers more extensively, turning the ghetto into an inferno. The heat, smoke, and explosions become unbearable. Many Jews are forced to leap from burning buildings, seeking a swift end to their suffering. On April 22, the German tactics intensify. Stroop reports 3 killed and 1 wounded German soldier. He also reports 6,580 Jews captured and 203 Jews and bandits killed. The systematic destruction continues, with German units methodically clearing out buildings and then setting them ablaze. The resistance fighters, increasingly driven underground by the fires, now rely heavily on their network of bunkers. From his command bunker, initially at 29 Mila Street, Mordechai Anielewicz maintains communication and directs the desperate fight. On April 23, he sends a final, poignant letter to Yitzhak Zuckerman, one of the Zob leaders on the Aryan side. In it, Mordechai Anielewicz writes, "The dream of my life has risen to become fact. Self-defense in the ghetto will have been a reality. Jewish armed resistance and revenge are facts. I have been witness to the magnificent, heroic fighting of Jewish men and women of battle." This message, filled with pride and grim determination, encapsulates the spirit of the uprising. The fighting evolves into a brutal cat-and-mouse game. Zob fighters emerge from sewers and hidden passages to ambush German patrols, then disappear back into the subterranean network. The Germans respond by blowing up manholes and attempting to flush out fighters with poison gas. On April 24, Stroop reports 0 killed and 3 wounded German soldiers. He claims 1,660 Jews captured, and another 1,811 pulled out of dugouts, about 330 shot. The daily tolls highlight the relentless German pressure and the sheer scale of the operation. The total number of Jews reported caught by this date reaches 19,450. The fighting units, though dwindling in number and ammunition, adhere to Mordechai Anielewicz's order to resist to the end, even to the point of suicide to avoid capture. Women fighters, armed just like the men, are a common sight, firing pistols with both hands and concealing grenades in their clothing for last-ditch attacks. By the end of April, the regular armed struggle, as initially conceived, becomes unsustainable due to the overwhelming German firepower and the widespread fires. The insurgents primarily operate from their bunkers, emerging mostly at night for skirmishes with German patrols. The Germans continue their methodical destruction, using heavy artillery to shell resistance positions along the ghetto wall. If you had been in their position, facing such overwhelming odds, would you have chosen to fight or to hide? Tell me in the comments. The ingenuity of the resistance is evident in their bunker systems. The main command bunker of the Zob eventually moves to 18 Mila Street, a large, complex hideout originally built by smugglers. It features multiple large rooms, masked hatches, ventilati on, and even water and electricity, with 6 potential exits. Over 300 people, including fighters and civilians, take refuge within its walls. The bunker's original hosts provide invaluable support, acting as guides and supplying food and even vodka from the Aryan side. The days blend into a nightmarish cycle of fire, smoke, and desperate struggle. The Germans systematically destroy factories and workshops, then burn the residential blocks, forcing Jews from their hiding places. When discovered, bunkers become scenes of fierce, often suicidal, resistance. The fighters understand the ultimate outcome, but their resolve remains unbroken. One of the largest battles in this phase takes place between May 1 and 3, involving fighters from Marek Edelman's unit. These localized engagements demonstrate the continued, albeit fragmented, resistance against the German efforts to completely clear the ghetto. The Germans are forced to acknowledge the tenacity of the resistance, even as their reports attempt to dehumanize the combatants. Which side of this story do you think history got wrong? Tell me in the comments. The air inside the bunker at 18 Mila Street is thick with the metallic tang of fear and the acrid scent of dust and smoke. It is May 8, 1943, nearly 3 weeks into the uprising. Above ground, the Warsaw Ghetto is a landscape of smoldering ruins, a testament to the relentless German campaign of destruction. The network of bunkers, once a shield, now feels like a tomb. Mordechai Anielewicz, the commander of the Zob, is here, along with his staff and approximately 100 to 120 other fighters and civilians. The bunker, once a bustling hub of resistance, is now a last bastion. The Germans, likely tipped off by a collaborator, have discovered its location. Suddenly, the muffled sounds of fighting from above grow louder, closer. Heavy boots pound on the rubble-strewn ground. Orders are shouted in German. The bunker is surrounded. The Germans begin throwing grenades into the ventilation shafts and any discovered entrances. The explosions reverberate through the underground chambers, shaking the earth and sending plumes of dust and debris through the air. Then, the insidious hiss of gas. The Germans are pumping poison into the bunker. Panic begins to ripple through the civilian occupants, who, upon the German call to surrender, emerge from the bunker to face an uncertain fate. But for Mordechai Anielewicz and his fighters, surrender is not an option. They have sworn to fight to the last breath, to deny their captors the satisfaction of their capture. The gas fills the cramped spaces, burning lungs, blurring vision. Mordechai Anielewicz understands that the end is here. There is no possibility of further fight, no escape. The choice is clear: capture and certain torture, or a final act of defiance. With a grim resolve, Mordechai Anielewicz and his comrades make their decision. They swallow the cyanide pills they have carried for this very moment. The gas chokes them, but it is their own hands that deliver the final, irrevocable blow, choosing death on their own terms rather than becoming trophies for their oppressors. Among those who perish are Mordechai Anielewicz's girlfriend, Mira Futurer, and many of the core leadership of the Zob. Through one undiscovered exit, a small group of approximately 15 people manages to escape the suffocating gas and the German dragnet. But within the bunker at 18 Mila Street, the heart of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising ceases to beat. The silence that follows is not one of peace, but of utter desolation. The mound of rubble that will one day cover this site will become a grave for over 100 heroes. The Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, though militarily crushed, reverberates through history as a monumental act of Jewish resistance during World War II. It was the largest single revolt by Jews during the conflict and the first significant urban uprising against German occupation in Europe. The fighters knew victory was impossible, but they chose to die with dignity, guns in hand, rather than passively accept their fate. The uprising lasted for 27 days, from April 19 to May 16, 1943, far longer than the Germans anticipated. SS Brigadier Jürgen Stroop, in his official report titled, "The Jewish Quarter of Warsaw is No More," documented the German suppression. According to Stroop's figures, at least 56,065 Jews were either killed or captured during the uprising. He reported approximately 7,000 Jews killed directly in the ghetto and another 7,000 deported to the Treblinka extermination camp. The remaining 42,000 captured Jews were sent to forced labor camps like Majdanek, Poniatowa, and Travniki, where most were murdered in November 1943 during Action Ernstfest, Operation Harvest Festive. Stroop's report claimed 16 German soldiers killed and 110 wounded for the entire duration of the uprising, figures that are widely considered to be understated, with independent research suggesting German casualties were significantly higher, possibly over 300. Mordechai Anielewicz's defiant stand, culminating in his death on May 8, 1943, transformed him into a powerful symbol of courage and sacrifice. His leadership inspired further rebellions in other ghettos and even within extermination camps, demonstrating that even in the darkest hours, the human spirit can choose resistance. The physical destruction of the ghetto was total. On May 16, 1943, Jürgen Stroop symbolically ended the operation by blowing up the Great Synagogue of Warsaw, a final act of annihilation to signify the complete eradication of Jewish life in the city. The area was razed to the ground, leaving behind a vast field of rubble. Despite the overwhelming odds and the tragic outcome, the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising achieved a profound, if intangible, victory. It denied the Germans the passive, silent liquidation they desired. It asserted Jewish agency and defiance in the face of absolute evil. The fighters chose their death, and in doing so, they chose their legacy. In July 1944, Mordechai Anielewicz was posthumously awarded the Cross of Valor by the Polish government in exile, and in 1945, the Cross of Grunwald, 3rd class, by the Polish People's Army. An unexpected fact lies in the aftermath. For months after the official liquidation, individual Jews continued to hide in the ruins of the ghetto, occasionally launching attacks on German patrols. Perhaps as many as 20,000 Warsaw Jews also found hiding places on the Aryan side of the city, demonstrating a continued, fragmented resistance that extended far beyond the official end of the uprising. If this story moved you, if you think these men deserve to be remembered, leave one word in the comments: defiance. Subscribe for a new forgotten story every week.